Good morning. I've been teaching creative writing for about 20 years, and just the other night I had a first. A student, a woman who appeared to be in her late 40s, stood up and walked out in the middle of the class. I had just given the assignment of writing dialogue. I imagined that the people could be real or imagined, or it could be you responding to the voice in your head. I was looking at the student carefully when I gave the assignment. That evening, in the beginning of class, when we had our check-ins, she mentioned that she had a very critical voice in her head that came from her mother, telling her that nothing she ever did was good enough. This student is someone identified as having great potential. I told her that the world needed to hear her story, and I meant it. The next morning, I pondered over the fact that my writing class is so much like group therapy, but that my students have produced some excellent writing out of this experience. When the student left, she told me that she wasn't feeling well, but since it was 2 minutes into the writing exercise, I didn't quite believe her. The next morning, my partner told me that maybe the exercise made my student feel sick, and that sometimes we have to feel worse before we feel better. She also advised that I should write about the story about my mother that I have been talking about. Despite that I am a creative writer, and that I have written extensively about my life, I have never written about the following incident with my mother. I haven't written about it because it is horrible in a way that could make you snicker when you say the word horrible. And I never wrote about it because I recognize that I am from a generation of women that has a life so much easier than our mothers. I also recognize that my mother's frustrations, and let's call it what it was, her molten rage, forged me. I owe a great debt to my mother, to both of my parents, really. My mother, in particular, raised me to be an artist. The incident that I have been referring to started when my mother found a toy gun in the backyard when she was gardening. However, I didn't know that it was a toy. I was about 12 or 13 in the awful preteen years. My mother came in the house, held the gun to my head, and said, "If you don't clean your room, I'm going to kill you." Now this was about 50 years ago, before so much gun violence was in the headlines. But my mother's frustration and rage was very real to me. I remember crying, trembling, and pleading, telling her that I'd be a better daughter if only she would put the gun down. She let me cry, plead, and tremble for a little while longer, and then she put the gun down and cheerfully said, "I was just kidding. It's a toy, you see." As Unitarian Universalist and a writing teacher, I believe that everyone's story is important. That means that my mother's story is important, and that my story is important too. So this year, along with the flowers of Mother's Day, let's remember that motherhood at times can be frustrating and trying. My maternal instincts have been, and still are, mostly toward my characters and to the protection of my writing time. Coming out in the mid-80s and my early 20s was, of course, complicated. But I distinctly remember the huge feeling of relief that came when knowing that I wouldn't be expected to get married and have children. Phew! Dodged that bullet. But then everything changed. When I was younger, I mentioned motherhood as a possibility for myself. Both of my parents widely cautioned that motherhood wasn't for everyone. I still haven't read too much into that. When I was in my mid-30s, my mother was dying. I, along with my father, cared for her. Her death broke me open, and I wrote my book, Tea Leaves, a memoir of mothers and daughters, published by Adelaide Books in 2012 about the maternal line of my family. You'd think the incident with the toy gun would have made me change my preaching behavior. And maybe I did clean my room after that. But I rebelled so badly in my teen years, I managed to erase all the voices in my head, including, one could argue, the voice of common sense. But the voice I have in my head now is cultivated educated and wise. I have no doubt that voice comes from my mother. Namaste.